Okay. All right, you guys. So, like any, so having planters is like having like a little party in a planter. So, like any planter, I mean, any party, it can get out of control, just like that slide showed you. And so, I'm going to just share a couple of tips that will help you to organize your thoughts and get your biggest bang for your buck. So, these are a couple of things, whether I'm doing a planter for myself or for a client, that I ask myself. So, a couple of things to get a game plan so that you don't waste money or time or wear yourself out doing something you don't get much impact. So, I ask myself size. What is the size of the area that I want to work in? And so, justly, what is the size of the planter? Little tip, usually bigger is always better. The smaller the planter is, the more you have to water it and the less you can do in it. But and then the number, do you want just one planter or do you want several? And then exposure. Before you buy any plant, you need to decide what is the, how much sun does it get at different times of the year. So it's good to really kind of keep an eye out that as you're planning to do your planters. And then what is the function? Do you just want to brighten up a little, like a little shady area, or just a little happy spot where you come and go all the time? Or is it where you look out your window from your favorite chair in the winter, or have your coffee in the morning? So what is the function that what do you want to achieve by doing a planter? So the first thing you want to do before you decide any plants is placement, and how you're going to get your biggest impact from that. So these are a couple of the things, and that I use: clustering, repetition, and focal point. So let's look at what clustering can do for you. When you cluster together a group of planters, it can paint a picture and create a vignette. It can repeat one feature like color, texture, plant choice. And it really helps to have multiple heights of planters or to stage them at different heights. And then sometimes you want to kind of stage them with some statuary or garden art, which is one of my favorite things to do. So, all right, let's look at some pictures. I'm gonna go through them really quickly. And because we especially now on a real time budget, the list of plants that are in these pictures will be listed, and I'm not going to go through them all, but you can use them later as a reference. And also I will be putting some things on the website that will be answer some of the questions as well. So let's look at some of the pictures real quick. This is a great little spot on my back porch where I cluster together similar planters, and used all white plants but different textures. Here is a little cluster of planters that you can't even, you only see one of them, but they're all that gray green kind of rustic look. And because I did the same planters together, I just could use just tons of different plants and different colors. And this is high summer season, so that's why it's so full and billowy that you can't even see some of the planters. But you can see it gives you different heights and interests like that. So this is a collection of planters. When I did at the Hilton Riverside, was nothing but concrete and beige walls. So we did these clusters of these tropical colored glazed planters with all, brights and more brights and whites, just to liven up that kind of dismal looking area. So here's a little area where I clustered planters together to create a little seating area that pulls it out of the main garden in a little parking little area for somebody's front yard. And here's a cluster at somebody's front door, just a kind of nice little greeting. Cluster of terracotta pots that give you, just some summer color trailing over. This cluster is all about the foliage, that wonderful trailing coleus, and then the ivy topiary with a wonderful little greyhound statuary just to kind of frame both of them. Now, repetition is a tool that I use so much in my garden because it really can be the workhorse of dealing with some challenging spaces. So it pulls together large spaces when you have a big yard and you just want to have something that kind of breaks it up a little bit. You can use a repetition of planters. My favorite thing is creating a soft wall where you don't want a hedge and you don't want a hardscape. It just helps a little, give you a little division in the garden. And then also solutions for tight, high visibility spaces. So this again is that other little garden we just looked at, but it pulls out and repeats the colors of the blooms out from the big garden into and kind of breaks it up a little bit. This repeats the white, red, and dark green foliage from the garden below up onto the house and kind of breaks up that big front garage area. This is an example of one way I love to use repeating planters. This is a townhome with a tiny little strip in between their only access to the common area, and the wall was a 3-story wall with no windows that belonged to their neighbor that they couldn't hang anything on or do anything with, and it was their view. So we did these repeating planters with changing out the color each season. It gave them something really beautiful and accessible to have in that little skinny space. So this is an example. Oh, I think the bar is kind of covering up. There's a repeating of 3 planters past a little kitty. The videos are kind of covering it up, but where I use these planters when we took the railing off of a deck to open up the garden. We did the series of these 3 planters along the side, and this is in the spring using little lemon cypress topiaries, and then this is the same set of planters in high summer. I know it's kind of wild and crazy looking, but it is loaded with penta, which is an amazing hummingbird magnet. So I have my early evening glass of wine while the hummingbirds just go crazy right there. This is a little brick walkway to someone's back garden, and they had this really pretty little screening division there, but we needed a way to soften that up because it was just brick and wood. So we found these wonderful little lion planters that and just put all evergreens in, including this wonderful little ardesia that's trailing over the side there. This is the main access to someone's side garden, and we did, you can't really sit behind a little video screens, but there is window boxes on the 3-story wall to the right, and then window boxes on the ground at the left that frame a cute little bench area that kind of makes that side garden that we all usually just kind of ignore, but it made it really special. So it's all about the journey to the around your property. So and again, a skinny little side garden that we did hanging planters that create height without width. So I use a lot of pieces like that. So this is usually how people usually use why they do planters, is to have a focal point, something really beautiful and exciting to see, to cheer up a spot or to make something special. So I use focal points to denote an entry and a welcome, to beckon one into the garden with an alluring sight line, or to make a dramatic statement in a place of significance. And a place of significance can be anything, like where you sit and have your coffee in the morning, or where you come and go, in and out of the driveway. So y'all all remember this was the ribbon cutting site, and Linda Schmidt's beautiful home, and she's a new member, so that's exciting. But we needed something really tall and grand to balance out the scale of the house. So we did these great podocarpus topiaries with trailing plants and mounting plants around the bottom. And also to the left, these are some really wonderful little azalea topiaries that I was able to find that frame that sweet little seating area over to the left there. These were some chunky big planters that we needed to add scale to a 4-story beach house that just needed something kind of really weighty at the bottom of their big steps to counterbalance that. And then this is just a sweet little porch in the historic district that I put these really pretty little planters with all evergreen because it's a complete shady area facing north. So I'd use different colored textures and foliage colors to keep that interesting. And then families walk from their back door to their carport. They might be the only one that sees it, but I use these wonderful Fatshidra topiaries just to break up all the concrete and brick and steel post and that kind of thing back there. So a front porch. This is a shady front porch. Once again, I used foliage, different foliage variegations and textures. And so most of the time, this planter stays just evergreen. And then in the summer, I tuck in this little Taurinia that picks up that wonderful yellow door, which I think is so wonderful. The back entrance to a family's home that is loaded with parsleys and herbs and different perennials, blooming perennials like this wonderful heuchera that I love so much. And then just a sweet little basket hanging on a rustic door. It brings your attention into the next little phase and then to the next door and then into the back garden. So it's just kind of a little alluring. This is a kind of using that alluring sight line as well. Shady, mossy path leads your eye to the chimney pots, and then there's just a sweet little planting of Nemesian Lamian with a bit of statuary at the very back that welcomes you to that back garden. Looking out over this homeowner's back porch, there's a beautiful blooming big planter that you'll see up close in a minute, but your view goes to the planters full of evergreen spheres and balls to the garden, and then back to the beautiful planters that sit atop those brick the brick gate columns that lead you out of the garden. So that's a beautiful sight line. From this family's pool deck, they look over the pool to this wonderful planter. I love planting this for them with that gomphrena that just dances above there in the sun. It's so beautiful. And this was actually just planted, so it got really big and huge and drapey, but it really grabs your attention from the pool. This is just a sweet little spot. My front door is kind of tucked back in, so I like to have some welcoming plantings. So on the left, I do this planter. You can't even see the planter because it's covered in that trailing vinca. And then I repeat it on the other side, so it kind of forms a little entrance there. And then sometimes you just need a sweet little kind of a little bit quieter. This is you walk through a gate and you see the little yoga frog just kind of having a quiet moment there. And this planter, that wire basket, is mossed, and it has all evergreen plantings there that just that stays just nice and quiet all through the year. And then you might have a quirky little spot that you want something fun. This is a hanging basket that I have this wild ivy geranium in, and it's just always doing something really bizarre all through the year. So it's just kind of a quirky little fun thing that's a happy spot. And then the little lizard, he lives in there, so he's entertaining as well. I did not plant this planter. This was in Chicago, and I was absolutely blown away by all the amazing, beautiful planters and gardens just in people's front yards. So I had to have my picture taken with it, but I wanted to give you an idea of the grand scale that you can have, and then you can have really diminutive little scale. This is just a little pedestal planter by one of my favorite chairs I like to sit in, and it's just full of nothing but this little peacock spike moss, which changes colors and turns like a turquoisey color. So it doesn't bloom, it doesn't do anything but just have really interesting stuff to look at. So before you buy any plant, so now that you decided where you're going to put it, now you got to decide what plants you're going to put in it. So really try to choose those with intrigue. And the old adage of Thrill Fill Spill is kind of outdated, but actually it's an old phrase, but it absolutely still works. So when you're looking at tags in the nursery, you want to really look for the wording that they're going to use today is going to be upright, mounding, and trailing, and really read tags. I'm telling you, that is the key to learning about plants and choosing the right ones, because many of the same plants like Penta and Angelonia and all those summery will come in different sizes. So make sure you're reading the tags. Choose color and texture that contrast if that's what you're going for, or you might just want a monochromatic, repeating color and varying textures. So here are a couple of examples. This is a wonderful antique planter that I love planting. And it is, so it's upright, thriller is these wonderful rosemary topiaries, and then it's all mounding with all these cool weather annuals that are listed to the side, and then trailing over is that sweet alyssum that is just has such a wonderful scent. And here's another view of that same planter to demonstrate the other aspect is the texture. So the plants like the diascia, that little coral color, the sweet alyssum, have really delicate blooms, and then they're balanced out by the chunky blooms of the lettuces, the heuchera, the bergenia, and the lamium. So there's a lot of really cool textures going on there. So again, your upright Angelonia and then the upright Penta that are both in here are absolutely my top two favorite summer upright like thrillers. And then the mounding of that Diamond Frost Euphorbia is just wonderful for that that fill and then that mounding, and then you have the trailing Portulaca that adds that chunkier, fatter leaf weight that balances out the Euphorbia. Again, this is a kind of a cool thriller in the middle here is the olive topiary. It's kind of hard to find, but it shows that you can have that kind of gnarly texture. It has like blue-green foliage, and then it's filled with all these really delicate things. So cool weather annuals. So it really is a nice balance. In the winter, for planted fall through winter, early spring, it's hard to find upright pieces, especially for the shade. But for sun, this Swiss chard City Lights is a great upright piece, as is parsley, if you want something that's herbaceous, and also you can eat it. It's really wonderful. But in the winter, it's hard to find that upright. So I do use a lot of shrubs as well for shade, especially. So I'm sure a lot of y'all have used this lemon cypress, but it is wonderful to give you that little bit of height that you need in the winter when there's not a lot of, I don't use snapdragons that much because they just kind of don't hold up all through the winter and look great. So I plant them in the ground, but not in planters. Okay, here's the lemon cypress again in a summer planter. And then you have cool texture with this foxtail for asparagus fern, and the color's neat and a great contrast to that coral colored geranium. Again, that coral and lime combination with the dianella, that flaxily coming up the middle, is such a wonderful plant. This is just an iconic summer bowl, basically, with the vinca and the angelonia, and also the scaevola fanflower is a great spill. That's the pink and the white around the edges there. And sometimes it's worth investing in that a really dramatic upright piece. That tropical hibiscus will give you all summer bloom, but you have to have a planter big enough to really make it worth it. And then you can, because you treat it like an annual, you can plant around it as well. So, or sometimes you just want, if you have a tiny little planter, then just put one plant in it that has some interest to it, like this new line of vinca called Tattoo Series. It has a lot of different colors and it kind of changes as it blooms. And just another little tip as well is when you're picking out colors, try to avoid something that just says a mix, because you never know what you're going to get. But if you want to mix and you don't want to try to put together a bunch of colors, get one that is a named mix, because it will be color coordinated for you. But don't just get a generic mix. It can be kind of icky. And again, this is just an all white garden. All these are different plants, but all in white. Again, the white, that's actually hanging behind me. And then just last couple of tips about really getting your bang for your buck. And that is to try and wait and choose plants, buy and plant at the right time. And what I usually do for all my clients is I plant in late April, early May. And those plants, if they're well cared for, will take you all the way through October, November, and then you replant again for cool season in October, November, lasting you April through May. And if you're deadheading, fertilizing, and watering, they will make it, and they can actually be their best at the end of the season. So that's why for like azalea tour, a lot of times we plant in the fall, and if it's taken care of, it looks wonderful in the spring. But sometimes you want to just plant evergreen plants. So, and that don't change as long as you take care of them. So here's some example cool weather. This is high summer. These are all a lot of my favorite summer annuals. Again, that Podocarpus topiary up close, that's a great dramatic evergreen. This is an all evergreen planter right here, that for a really shady spot. And I love that White King Ardesia that's trailing over the edge. And sometimes just making a statement with an evergreen piece like an ivy topiary, it is a big investment, but well cared for, it can be a great, just a permanent, wonderful structure in your garden. So, but sometimes you cannot, if you have a party in the off season, like September, or if you're planning for the Azalea Festival, you cannot wait until October to plant, or for late April to plant. So sometimes you have to go for that bit of investment that's not going to last you the whole, but it'll look great for the party. And that is instant impact, short season plants you'll have to buy, and then buying things that are in bloom. And here are a couple of examples. Like this was on an azalea tour, and that's a forced hydrangea in a cold frame that's just for effect and for fun. This was a glass outdoor table. We took the glass out, put wire in, and planted this blue star creeper. That's just fun. And then planted those little wire teapots and cups. And then this is, oh, the frame is in it. This is my wonderful bathtub that's in my back garden. And for special occasion, I went ahead and planted it with blooming perennials and then this wonderful bridal spirea. And my husband's very happy now that I'm not taking baths in the backyard. So get ready to plant and create, bloom, and have your garden bloom with joy.